Welcome to another podcast, a Rock My Age podcast on living life to the full. I am delighted today to have with me Tim Malnick. Tim is from a company called Different Space. Tim is a coach and facilitator, but he particularly focuses on the helping people work with money. So we're going to kind of deep dive into, I guess, mindsets around money, behaviors around money. I'm really interested in this for personal reasons, I guess, how I see money and how it affects my life. So Tim, welcome.
Hello, nice to be here, thanks.
So I'm really interested, I guess, firstly, as a coach and facilitator, how you got into this, particularly into this idea of kind of helping people manage their money or look at money in different ways, and maybe talk a little bit about some of the workshops that you do and the themes that you run, and then perhaps we'll talk about some of the you and I talked a little bit about some of the questions that certainly I as a woman hold my age, but I've talked to other women before this podcast to get their reading on how they see money as well, so hopefully we can share that as well.
Sure. Okay, well, I'll give you a bit of a backstory. So briefly, so my training is as an organization psychologist. So I've always been interested in people and the work they do. And excuse me, two questions really. Number one is, how do people really do what they're here to do in life? Whatever that is. So that's what work in a very, very broad sense. But how do we really live the lives that we're here to live? And the other is, I've always been a bit of an activist. I've always had a kind of political activist mentality. I've always been interested in kind of environmental stuff, social stuff. And so I've always been interested in, why do organizations and businesses sort of run in a way that they, if you like, grow and get profit, but seem to be really harming the world? So there's a very personal question and a very global question. And a number of years ago, I was running a really interesting master's program that was about responsible leadership and sustainable leadership. And one of the early modules we did was about new economics, because we used to kind of say, well, if you want to understand why the world is heading in the direction it's going in, this was for leaders who really wanted to make a difference and kind of create positive change. We need to understand what the system is trying to maximize. It's kind of money, it's growth, it's productivity, it's a number. And on that program, we got really loads of very, very clever people rethinking economics and money and GDP. But I met a guy, I was introduced to a guy called Peter Koenig, who's the founder of the work that I'm mainly going to be sharing today. And he was the first person I'd met who pointed out that, yes, there's a money system out there. You know, there are banks, there are mortgages, there's interest, there's all of that stuff. But he was the first person who said, we have to, in order to understand that or try and change that, or even actually sort out our own money, we have to understand how all of that somehow is kind of in our psychology, which maybe sounds a bit mysterious, but he turned the mirror inwards, really. And as someone who was both a psychologist supporting people to grow and change and live, rich lives, rich in the true meaning of the word lives, and who was interested in change, that was amazing for me. So I studied with him. I did his workshop, which I now run half a dozen or more times. Each time I got something more from it, and that's how I got into it. And I guess in summary, I've done a lot of things to support people around change and social change and personal evolution. And I hopefully, as we'll discover a bit today, talking about money is one of the most powerful ways into some of our core life questions, really.
A lot of people don't necessarily like talking about money, do they? Or how much they earn, or I guess sort of where they are in their world as money. So is that quite hard for people? Do you find it's hard for people to talk, or are there particular questions you ask to get to the nub of it?
The funny thing is, I often say on the workshop, money is a taboo. And money is one of the last great taboos, and it's a taboo hidden in plain sight, right? Because everywhere you go, there's money. You walk down the street, you look in shops, you pay for your bus ticket. Money is everywhere. You get your bills in the morning. And we talk about money, but we always talk about money out there. The taboo, and this is your question, the thing that people don't like to talk about is, how do I do money? How do I do it? And in answer to your question, it's curious because I find that as soon as you create a safe space, you know, I do coaching with people around it, but also I do this workshop. And it's very, I mean, it's lovely because you get a group of people who don't know each other, total strangers. But as soon as you invite them in to talk in confidence and safely about money and how they do money, actually people have a lot to say very, very quickly.
Because I imagine that, it's interesting you say that, because I imagine that people don't really want to say, I'm not very good at managing my money, because that, right. I imagine that's quite a difficult thing for people to say, is it? I'm not sure.
Well, you see, maybe one of the starting points, one of the things I say on this work is once you become curious, and I would say hopefully anyone listening to this podcast, the first step with this work is to at least consider that whatever you think you're dealing with as a reality is actually telling you something about your very, very personal and unique and peculiar dance with money, because we all have one. So it's a bit like, you know, if you do yoga, what you learn is something about your very unique particular body. And all of us have places where we have more ease and places where we have more tension and places where our bodies can't go. And yeah, it's kind of the same with your money dance, really. So in answer to your question, yes, some people think they can't manage money well. Other people come on the workshop and they're meticulous about how they manage money, but then that may also be telling them something about their lives. So I personally don't start with any assumption that someone who's very, very organized with their money is necessarily, in my view, doing money better than someone who's not. I'm more interested in the psychology and the emotion than the spreadsheet. Now, an accountant or a financial planner, and I know hopefully you'll be talking to one of my friends and colleagues who does a more, you know, who's a financial advisor. Of course, there's a place for all of that. But what I'm interested in is not the numbers or the spreadsheets, but really the question is, how is your money dance supporting your life? Because what I'm interested in as a psychologist is actually life and spirit and soul, really, but money's the way in. So,
and does one's perspective on that? I mean, obviously, it really impacts your life. I was talking to a friend recently who said she had a number that she needed to get to for her to give up work. Worked in the corporate world for a really long time. Actually isn't enjoying working, but she had this number. And recently, she speaking to her own financial advisor and realized she'd actually reached that number, but she was still going.
Yeah, very common.
Actually wanted to carry on. And what came to her was not then actually it wasn't about the money. It was something in her own psyche that she'd learned from her father, which was one needs to keep working, you know, do a good day's work. And so it's not about the money. And I'm fascinated in that process, because I talk to a lot of my friends who are thinking about second phase of life, but 50, 45, 50 plus, whatever age that is. Do I have enough money to live the next 30, 40 years in the way I want to? And I imagine that's is that a norm, you know, is that a realistic conversation to have in one of your workshops?
Well, it's a common pattern. So you said many things. So if I try and remember, and I'll just give a little flavor of the work, right? We can't really get into it. So that lady, that's a very common pattern. And it's actually a beautiful example, because when we say I need this number to have enough, or to leave my job, or to set up the thing I always dreamed of, or just to give myself an easier time, or what we're saying is there's a number reality which will give me freedom or something. So the whole process is to start to be curious that we're entangling two things that actually in reality are not the same. A number and a human experience. Do I feel free? Right now, whether I actually have the human experience of feeling free, or I might say better, in touch with my intrinsic freedom, actually, and this might be provocative, is nothing to do with a number. You can be a millionaire and not feel free in your own life. And I've met plenty of people like that. And you can be penniless and have great freedom. Or you can be a millionaire and feel free. So it's not about not being a millionaire. What we try and do with this work is to see that we tie up a number in different ways with different human experiences that we want. So in the case of the lady that you mentioned, and people very quickly, when they talk about money, often link that to parents or even ancestry. It's very common. Maybe, people who they come from a sort of immigrant somewhere in their ancestry. There's often a very, very strong work hard mentality, which it needs to be respected and was absolutely appropriate at a certain time, but may no longer actually be what you need. Mm. But if you're living that out unconsciously, you will be driven to keep working. And then you find, if you're not careful, you're not actually doing what you really want in life. And you don't know why anymore.
And that's interesting as well, because again, I think I'm guilty of this myself, but again, friends
we all do it.
Speaking to, we're saying that there's, in a sense, there's always that when I have enough money,
yes,
I can do X.
Yeah.
So in a way, what I take from that is there's danger we put off living a full life, because we always think money is connected with living a full life. And if only I had enough money to, I don't want to go on the tube, if I had enough money to get a taxi everywhere, or if I had enough money to live in a nicer house or whatever it is, that feels like often a mindset, doesn't it, around life?
It totally is, and you're right, and I don't think we need to feel that we're guilty of it. I mean, I know you were just using it as well. The thing I'm interested in is we are very, very strongly socialized by our culture to believe that there is a reality there. I mean, it's very, very deep, and that's why some of the things I might say today might feel provocative or counterintuitive, and we can go deeply into that. So we pick up messages, of course, from our parents, our ancestry, our caregivers, and that will be different depending on what was going on money-wise with mum and dad and different situations. And overlaid, we pick up very, very strong messages from society, from politicians, from economists. It's very strong. Now, what we have to realize is none of those people really understand money either. I mean, literally, they did a study of members of the Houses of Parliament, right, MPs, who didn't actually know how money was created. So even in a very literal sense, they don't understand money. But very few people understand, as you say, this kind of the psychological mindset side of it. And you're right. So one thing we could say is, anytime I believe there's anything, that's, in this case, it's money, and money is very powerful around this. But we also do the same with, if only I had a job, blah, blah, or a better job, or if only I had a partner, if I don't have a partner, or if I have a partner, if only I had a different partner. Humans are very, very good at making future projection and saying, somewhere out there, there's the right number, or the right job, the right this, even the right me, when I've done all my therapy. At root, I'm not saying there's nothing in that, but the important thing to see is that life happens now, and the richness of your life is not the future, it's now. And if we don't catch the money thing as really just a kind of distorted story, as you say, the danger is we spend decades doing something that doesn't actually give us life now. Maybe we feel depleted, maybe we've got some other dream on hold. Then we have to say, well, why am I doing that? It's because of some idea about what may or may not happen in the future. And we can go a bit further with why we might do that sort of thing. So one of the things we say in this work, as a kind of an invitation and a challenge, is whatever it is. So, I'd maybe say this to you now, but whatever it is that's out there that you dream of, or that you would imagine wanting to do or do more of, when you've got enough, the invitation is start doing that now, with and without money.
I think that's the fascinating thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I was talking to a coach of mine recently, and he said, I was talking about selling my house, and he said, you don't need to sell your house to change your life. you can change your life now. You may decide to sell your house, but that's a really interesting point, Tim, isn't it? Because it's, that's the connection with the money thing, isn't it? We can use money as a barrier, to not
Totally.
get on with something, which is terribly useful, of course, isn't it? Because if you don't want to do something because you think, oh, I might be crap at it, I might, fail at it, you say, well, I haven't got enough money yet to do that.
Yeah, it is terribly useful. And also the thing about money is because we all have our own particular dance, but we also have a cultural or socialized dance that's a little bit shared. And so you can actually not do the things that really bring you alive, or not share your greatest gifts, or not follow your, whatever, your bliss. And you can be patted on the back for being a sensible, responsible person because you're saving for the future. Or so this is the thing about money being a taboo. You don't even get challenged, right? So a friend of yours, if you were, I don't know, not doing something, they might say, oh, you should do it, it's wonderful. And if you say, yeah, but I really need to save a little bit, I'll do it in 5 years, they'll kind of go, oh yeah, well, that's sensible. I mean, not always, but it's easily hidden, this little twist that we all do.
And it's interesting, isn't it, you say that, because one of the things that other women have shared with me, and I definitely feel this myself, is a fear that I'm not doing the right thing with money. So, I question, should I keep it in the bank? A friend of mine does these online investment things and vehicles, and I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe I should do that. And then, that there is that inherent thing, but I've worked really hard for my money. So then I need to make sure I make the right decisions about it. And I think women, particularly our age, are thinking that, because they think, well, particularly if you're a single woman, that's not, I'm not just saying it's only for single women, but I've got to maybe look after or be able to care for myself through the next 30, 40 years. How on earth do I plan for that, have enough money? And I think it's that fear of making the right decision around the future as well, which is quite hard.
Yeah, I'm just writing notes because you're saying a lot of really important things. No, it's okay. It's great.
Asking about 3 or 4 questions at one time, but it's my mind's kind of.
It's great. I'm gonna. Yeah, I do this on the workshop a lot, because one of the things we do in order to understand someone's money story in general, we pay a lot of attention to people's actual words, because that can reveal a lot. The word, is it enough, or is it
fear, or
whatever. But I'm just trying to remember the things. So, of course, people worry about getting it right. And I think you're right. That may be particularly gendered, or gendered in a particular way. And I really understand it. So one of the things I always say, and I take this phrase from another body of work, not the money work, but you can think, there is a consensus reality. So I'm not pretending there aren't pensions and there aren't investments and mortgages, and there are also some problems with social care in this. So there are some very real things. But there's also, at the same time, there's another level, which you might call is just the mystery of life, right? Here we are. I didn't pay to get here. I didn't arrive with money. There's some quite mysterious unfolding, which I think different cultures have different language for what that means, and different people, different systems. But in some way, and when I say this to people in the workshop, I think pretty much everyone resonates in some way. It's like there is the practical reality, but there's also like a soul journey, right? Or a process of individuation, maybe Jung would say. There's something else going on. And the problem is what most of us do, partly because we're told to do it, and partly because it's scary to really live and trust your individuated soul path. But it's also wonderful to try and do it, but it's scary. What most of us do is we make the gravitational center of our decision-making the money, the mortgage, the savings, have I got enough? Da, da, da. Now, this doesn't say none of that exists, but the suggestion is, just step back. Really, here we are. We appear as if by magic. We go through this process. We all have dreams. We all have, kind of, whether it's simply wanting to grow beautiful flowers in your garden, or paint, or take on some great mission, or travel, whatever it is. So it doesn't have to be a great a work thing, although it could be. But there are all things that kind of our life pulling us towards. That would be my take, or calling us towards. So the fundamental question is, what are you going to make the gravitational center? That's the first invitation.
And is that something you would ask? So I don't want to give you to give too much away in your work at your workshops, because I'm interested to go on one and experience it myself. Is that what are the sort of first, if I was sitting in front of you now, what are the sort of 1 or 2 questions that you might begin to ask me? And I'm happy to share whatever I that might begin to get to an essence of that issue of where is your gravitational pull, and how do you see money in your life?
So I'll respond to that, and maybe still say a little bit about this question about wanting to do it right and the worry about the future, because I think they're probably very relevant for a lot of people and a lot of people watching.
By the way, I recognize myself that it's not just about money, that I'm looking at getting things right. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So.
Okay, beautiful. So thank you for sharing that, sort of on a podcast. And so, there's a lot going on. So one of the things is even that little laugh, like just to laugh about it, that's actually a sign, like a great sign. So we can explore that a bit. So let me talk about the process, and then we'll just dip in a very, very light way, I promise. And one thing to say about the money work is it's a lot more fun than people think, right? People sign up for it, and then very often in the first morning, it's like, but actually it's tremendous fun, really. It can be quite touching and emotional. Why is it fun? Because what we're actually talking about is life. When we're talking about money, in my view, we're never really talking about money. We're actually talking about your life and your longing and whatever you really want. And then the emotion around that, whether it's a fear of getting it wrong or a fear of not having enough in the future, or it could be a million different things. But that emotion is part of what's tying up not just money, but it's tying up life, right? So when you ask me, what do we do on the workshop? A lot of what we do is what I call detective work. We start to, by sharing our story and being really curious about the words we're using and the fears I have around money. And then the person sitting next to me maybe has a very different set of fears or hopes, or and then I also notice, it's strange, maybe I have no money, the person sitting there is a millionaire, but we're both worried about freedom or getting it right. So gradually we realize, then this is detective work. The thing I thought was all about money is actually a beautiful mirror back to me of some part of my own psychology that gets in the way. So that's detective work, and we can do that in many ways. So we look at what messages did you get from family? What is it you'd love to do right now that you're not doing? We play games with money. And the point is, all of it is just to try and bring into consciousness, bring into our awareness, something that's been going on and getting in the way of life, but hasn't really been conscious because it's been tied up in, that's just what you do with money. So I don't know if that makes sense. That's the first step. Then what you find is all of that is in service of, as I say, life. So the second step is, the more I can start to notice the particular places I get stuck with money, and they can be very different for different people. If I can start to really see, that's a side of me I've not been able to quite integrate, is getting in the way, then the idea is the more I integrate that, the more I then become, if you like, a slightly more flexible or expanded person, then I can do what I want more in my life with consciousness. So if we used your example, since you said it, so you like to get things right and want to be a perfectionist, and that's with money. Yeah. So I'm trying to think of a way to do it without actually going into the process, but so an avenue, there's further to go. You might say, I don't know, what's the opposite of getting it right and being a perfectionist? I'm hopeless, or I'm.
I guess so. I suppose that
I'm not saying it's true, by the way. I'm not making any judgment. Very important. This is why I'm being careful not to get into the word. Into the word. There's no judgment. But if I just take it a little bit further, if I believe that I need to get my money right, Lots of people do. And if I believe that getting my money right will be the key to the future that I want, so if I do the right investment or sell my house at the right point in the market, or, you know, keep enough for travel, but enough also for old age, I get it right, then from a psychological point of view, I'm very identified or invested in being right. I really don't like being wrong or stupid or foolish. Or does that make sense? You know, I just don't like that.
I think there's an interesting thought I had when you said that as well, which is, in a way, you have to measure what is right as well. And that's very hard, because what does right mean? It's a bit like, what does success mean, isn't it? Because right might mean, well, I made a bit more money out of the sale of a house, or I made a bit more money out of my pension, or didn't. But then if you're not living the life that you want to, or that you have a yearning for, is that right? You know, so exactly. And it goes back to currency, doesn't it? It's like, it goes back to this figure, sort of mythical figure, that somehow that is right. So right to me is interesting, actually, because it speaks to the how one does something. And I've been working with that myself, actually, in my coaching that I'm having with myself, which is, you know, I get into the how rather than the why, or where am I looking to head to. So that's right. Interesting. So that's kind of what you're saying there with money, isn't it? So it tips from one's, which I think is what we're, you know, where we're focused, which is it tips from, this is about my life and my own perspectives on myself, that immediately tips into money. And you can see how the two, as you say, do an interplay and dance together.
Absolutely. I mean, you're picking up incredibly quickly. So I'd love you to come. And there is further to go that we won't do in this conversation, but absolutely. So one of our very confused ideas we have as a culture is around what's right. So generally, not everywhere, not every subgroup, but generally you see someone who has lots of money and lots of material financial assets, and it's very easy to say they're a success, they got it right. But, you know, they may be very happy, they may be living the life they want, in which case, wonderful. They're lucky to be doing that with money, great, of course. But they might be miserable. You know, who knows? They might be doing, you know, all sorts of regrets for paths they didn't take. Now, we don't know, and there's no judgment. Again, I'm just trying to say that it doesn't seem wise, and it doesn't seem really true to too much put the money with the sense of, you know, the right way to live. Whereas what you said is, if we're going to make any judgment at all, surely what's right is to trust as far as you can what feels true and right and beautiful and inspiring for you, and to follow that movement with and without money. You know, that's what I'm saying. And that requires courage, yes, consciousness, and it's not easy. That's why we have to do the detective work. But, you know, who would you rather be at the end of the day, or on the day you die? Would you rather look back, or, you know, if you were still making evaluations of right and wrong, let's hope that we're not, you know, but if we were, surely we're going to look back and say, well, you know, I lived the life, I followed what I wanted, I backed myself, I trusted the world, I trusted myself, I accelerated the things that really mattered, and I didn't spend decades doing the things I didn't want to. You know, if you do that and you die penniless, you're still going to tell me that wasn't the right way to live? Yeah.
Or if you die with lots of money and you haven't followed your yearning. And it's interesting what you said about, you know, we often look at, you know, someone next to us or someone else we know in our environment and say, oh, they've got more money or less money. And, you know, I always find that I remember a guy saying to me who yes, on paper has a lot more money than I do. He said to me something once very interesting. He said, but I can only drive one car at a time, Erika, and so can you. You know, I have a toilet and I have a living room and I have a bit of a garden, but so do you. Maybe different sizes, but in reality, and we all know that, you know, it's how you feel inside of those things. But the money doesn't actually necessarily, as you say, manifest into, you know, happiness. We can all know that. But also, there's a limit to what money can actually achieve for you in any one moment, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's very important to say I'm not against money at all. Money's great. So a lot of my role in this, you know, when I'm doing this work is I'm interested in people's life path. And this is the thing, if someone follows what's theirs to do, and it's not obvious, you know, it's not like we know what it is, although again, other cultures have through history have put much more emphasis on the uniqueness, and, you know, different indigenous cultures will choose a name for a child based on some sense of what their unique gifts are. So we're very bad at that in this society. You know, we say, all right, investment bankers, you get 10 zeros, and nurses and teachers, you get 3 zeros. And, you know, it's kind of crazy what we do with money. But what I'm interested in is supporting people to follow what's their life path. And then the money, and it's not a naive position or disrespectful, but as you say, you may end up with more money or less money or the same money, but you'll definitely have more life, and you'll have more richness. And then strange things start to happen. Because, and I'm sure you'll know, and people watching will know, if you think about the people in your life who've truly inspired you, or who you'd like to be like, or also people that you would like to support, it's not whether they're rich or not rich or have big businesses, but people who are passionate are attractive. I mean, you know, in the deepest sense, they actually radiate some field. And so very often people find if they can really take that step with courage, you know, the bottom doesn't fall out of the world. It may feel challenging in different ways, or you may have to change a little bit your story or expectation, or maybe not. But interesting things start to happen because you're actually more aligned with life. And it becomes quite a different way of thinking about the world. But what I'm suggesting, and this links a little bit back to my political work, is, by God, we need more people in the world, whatever they're doing, who are unhooking themselves from the economic industrial orthodoxy and saying, actually, I'm going to really follow what I think's my mind to do. Some of them will end up with lots of money if what's theirs to do aligns with where money's flowing in society. Great. Some of them will have the same money, some of them won't. But the work is to free people up to take that step, because I think things would be better if more people did it. And if I may just say one, or maybe a couple of other things around that. So, you know, we got into this talking about what's the right thing to do, but some other very, very common things that come. So I just...
Yeah, lovely.
So, you know, people with children, for example, what they'll often think is, well, I'd love to do X. You know, I'd love to change my job or paint more, or even just spend more time with my children. But I can't, because I need to be a responsible, you know, I need to be responsible. I need to be a caring parent. Now, again, there's an entanglement, because if we don't think about it, if we just follow the story, we believe being responsible and caring means I do a job that I don't really like to get money for my kids. But if we just stop and consider what's the best thing any parent could really do for their children, really, you know, at least consider the fact that for children to grow up with an adult who feels free, creative, and empowered to follow whatever their unique path is. Wow, what a message for a child to receive, whether there's money or not. Otherwise, maybe that child's receiving a message, you know, implicitly, but that is how children learn. Life is not a safe place where you can really be who you are and follow it. Life is a place where you have to adapt and sacrifice and stuff. So some of it becomes a little bit paradoxical, a little bit like what you said with right. Yeah.
Sorry, Tim. Sorry.
No, you carry on.
No, I was just going to say that I think it feels like there is quite a lot of that going on about sacrificing for money. Sorry.
So if that's true, if the reason someone's doing that, and again, it comes up often in workshops, is an idea of being responsible, you can flip it and say, well, okay, hang on a minute. Maybe it's very irresponsible to do that. Maybe to give decades of my life coming home in a slightly crabby mood, not much energy, teaching my children implicitly that the world is not a place where you can do what you really believe, maybe that's a terribly irresponsible act. And maybe real responsibility would be to take a risk. Now, again, I'm saying generally, because for each person it's different and different words, but that's a general. I mean, another common one would be, and this is quite a deep one to say, but many people have concerns about old age, and particularly if they're by themselves. So I really understand that. And there is a consensus reality. I get it, old age and pensions aren't great. But if we're not careful or not conscious, we say, I don't want to, in the future, I don't want to be, I don't know, vulnerable and insecure. Something like that. I want to feel strong and secure.
Yeah.
It makes sense. If you're not careful, you follow that mindset, what you realize when you look is right now, not in old age, you actually feel insecure and vulnerable.
Interesting.
You're actually not secure now. Because if you were truly secure now, you would back yourself to follow what you want and somehow build something that's going to work. So again, it can be a future projection. And it's a sneaky one because we say, well, of course I need pension, but one way of thinking about it, and again, I'm not against money or investments. A lot of people have investments and die because, death comes and they haven't done what they wanted. So there's a real question, what to invest in now for the future? Well, if I invest now in my physical health, my mental health, my friendship, my community, and living as rich and fulfilling a life now as I can, then surely in the future, whatever happens, that's going to put me in the best real state. But what we tend to do is we bag all of that stuff up and put it onto a number. And so it's quite tricky psychologically. I don't know how that sounds to you.
Yeah, I totally align with that. And I think there's also that piece around keeping, not keeping, but there's the planning for myself, as you say, as I get older, or things I want to do. And then there's the leaving something for the children often, which is also, I think, really interesting, because as one friend of mine, wise friend, once said, we can keep putting money aside for our kids and say, well, I shouldn't really fly first class, I shouldn't really go on that holiday, or I shouldn't do whatever because, I need to leave something for the kids. But of course, as he said, if you don't fly first class, your kids surely will. So you end up kind of going, what was that all about? So,
I think it's about really investing money in what brings you life now. And that doesn't necessarily mean being frivolous. There may be money left over, there may be surplus. Great, invest it wisely, of course, or give it to people, no problem. But if you're diminishing genuine experience of richness in life now, freedom, security, whatever, if you're diminishing that now for some idea of the future, just be careful you're not just caught up in some story. And again, I'd come back to the idea of really what's the best thing one could leave one's children, really, and what's the most loving gift one could give one's children now or at any point. Money's great, of course, if you can help them, fantastic. But I wonder if the most loving, generous gift is a model of an adult life really well, courageously, beautifully lived. Because then if your children grow up with that, then they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay, I think.
That's a really great summation. I love that, Tim. So tell me about your workshops, because I think you've got some coming up, or one coming up in June. So I think it'll be great to just talk around that, because I think people who are listening and thinking, well, that's fascinating to go and in a safe space, as you say, talk about my own feelings of money, as we've been talking about, where I put money perhaps as a barrier to life, or as you said, is it stopping, is my perspective on money stopping me really living a rich life today? Kind of get on, as you said, get on with it, money or no money type thing, which I think is a really interesting way of thinking about it. So tell us about the workshop.
You mean just the dates, or
dates and just what people might kind of expect, and how long it is? I guess, is it a day workshop?
It's so when pre-COVID it was a 2-day face-to-face. Now I run it over 4 consecutive half days. I find that works better online. We do it from 3 till 6:30 on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which seems to work quite well for weekends and work and stuff. And it's on, I'm pretty sure, the 24th to the 27th of June is the next one. It's on my website. Everybody welcome. I mean, one of the lovely things about the workshop is you do get a real variety of people. I have run workshops, so sometimes I'm invited to run them for certain communities. So I have actually run workshops for all women communities and networks and all sorts of others. And the public ones, it's just whoever comes. And what can I say? They are a lot more fun. They are often very deep, but in a very, very touching way. You never have to share anything that you don't choose to. But of course, everyone's a little bit at their edge. And I think most people find they end up sharing stuff because they see it is safe and it's helpful. But there's no pushing or anything like that. And I think you will, if you come, you will discover something that will help life. I mean, I always say to the people at the beginning of the workshops, one of the things I say is, if this workshop is successful, effective for you, you will leave and you will take actions, and the actions may bring you more money, less money, or the same money. They may bring you more debt, less debt, or the same debt, right? So it's not a classic money management workshop, but what you'll leave with is you'll be able to do any of those things consciously and more freely in service of money.
Sounds like a disclaimer on one of those financial services ads, Tim.
Yeah, I suppose it's a psychological disclaimer. But you see, then when you look at it, everything's very distorted, even just in the news and stuff. So who are the people who are most in debt in the world? It's often very wealthy business people. You know, entrepreneurs often have failed with businesses dozens of times. They mortgage their houses, they take on debt, things fail. So it's even this idea, emotion, there's a lot of emotion about debt. There can be shame about it. But actually conscious, purposeful debt is part of how the economic money system works.
Of course.
Most people are in debt with a mortgage, but that's considered a good thing. So even when you play with the ideas on a very surface level, it just shows you that we just have really messed up ideas about money, debt, success, security. So we do a lot of playing with that sort of stuff.
Brilliant. Sounds fantastic.
It is. You can probably tell I'm very enthusiastic about it, and I love talking about it as well. Yeah.
Well, I'm really interested in coming, and I think that on Rock My Age retreats, Debbie and I have talked so much about this idea of having someone coming in and doing a piece on that. So I'm delighted that we've met Tim and that had this conversation, because I'm sure you'll be part of that with us. Brilliant, Tim, thanks a lot.
Pleasure.
I'll put your details on our channels so people can get hold of you for your workshop. Wish you all the best with that. I hope to be on it. Until then, thanks again, Tim. Really, really interesting conversation.
Pleasure. Yeah, no, really nice to chat, and thanks for inviting me.
Pleasure. Thank you.
I'm sure. See you again sometime.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation today, and if you'd like to listen to more conversations with inspiring women, do look at our website, rockmyage.com, or register to have them delivered direct to your inbox. Until next time.